Alright, let's kick it off. I'm gonna continue with the scene I've been working on this week. I started on Monday. So there will be a lot of like sculpting and normal baking and stuff like that. So I'm gonna jump into Blender. And this is the scene I've been working on, or the blocking out part. So I know Fiskor want to see how to normal bake one of these, and actually I've done it with most of the assets. So I'm gonna make another one of these garbage piles, or rock pile. Or actually, I could redo this stone because it got a bit too much like a potato instead of a rock. So I'm gonna redo it with more sharp edges and stuff like that. So I'm gonna open up that file. So what I'm thinking, I'm not gonna do it as round and smooth. I'm gonna make a more sharp version. So actually, this is the low poly and this is the high poly. So I could go probably with this one. I'm gonna make a completely new one actually. I just need to match the scale a tiny bit. I think that's close enough. So what I do, I start a new file and then I append it from the block out scene. I can find the object. And I'm gonna save this in my assets folder as second version. So maybe just subdivide it a couple of times. Oh, I ended up doing this manually. You can just subdivide it with the subdivision toolbar. But let's try and keep the faces kinda squarish. And yeah, I'm gonna turn on screen cap key so you can see it down in the left. Oh. I'm gonna turn off the music. It's either way just a hassle. You get a lot of copyright infringement messages, even though that one was copyright free. So you can turn on portional editing with O, and Alt O is only connected if there were any loose parts. Alt O is your friend. So it doesn't really, you shouldn't look for details when working with the like base mesh. Just look for the overall shape. Alright. Hello Blenderhead, hello Soggy, Louis. There was a couple of guys here yesterday also when I tried out the stream. So let me know if it buffer, or it's probably gonna buffer. Oh, the webcam is really... Let me just fix that one. Let me know if it's buffering. It's probably gonna start to buffer when I start to sculpt. Because then, yeah, I lowered it, or I actually increased the the exposure. I decreased the exposure. So it's probably gonna start to buffer when I'm sculpting, because the computer is kinda bogged down, and I can't encode with software because my CPU gets, I get 96% CPU load when encoding H.264. So I'm encoding on my graphic card, and yesterday I was encoding by default on my main graphics card. I have two, so today I'm gonna try and encode on my second card. So the main card drives the display and stuff. So okay, I'm pretty happy with this base shape. I'm gonna rename it to high poly, and I'm gonna turn on my favorite matte cap, which is this one. So I basically had that one shape that looked like a potato. I'm gonna try with this one. I also have my own Pi menu editors, so this is one of them, which can just apply a multi-res with a couple of steps. I'm gonna step that one up. And now to the fun part, sculpt mode. So this is just to soften the edges and stuff like that. This bottom part will not be shown. It will be probably in the ground. And you can sculpt as much as you want on the high poly, because we're gonna apply the base shape later, and also apply a decimate modifier to get the low poly version, which we're gonna do all the baking to. So I kind of wanted it to have some kind of ridge here, and also in the middle there's going to be a sword. So I'm going to lay down some strips, and this is the part where the stream can start to lag. So and when laying down these strips, you don't have to be super precise. It kind of looks weird in the beginning, but you're gonna end up smoothing and sculpting it more later. So just try to get the overall shape that you want. That's pretty good. I'm gonna smooth it out now. So I will probably use this menu, because my own menu is kind of lagging when I stream, to avoid any buffering, possible buffering. And these brushes you can get them for free on BlendSwap. It's called Orbs Sculpt brushes, and they are kind of amazing. I've done a video about them if you want to know how to install them, it's not a big deal. You just append them. So, oh, now I started my menu. Because I got some of my favorites, like pinch, slash curve, cracks, rock noise is also really good, but this flatten and yeah, the flatten is one of my absolute favorites. So I'm just gonna add a couple of like notches like this. Maybe not that too many. And you got a couple of different textures also. And what I like to do is go into the crack one with soft edges. I think it's this one. I'm gonna go into full screen also. Yeah, yes, let me know if the stream becomes bad. I have it on a second monitor, but it seems to be better today than yesterday. Also, there was one guy that gave me a tip about a streaming card, Elgato, which I read up on, and that's when I got the idea, like I can encode on my second graphic card. With shift key you can just quickly smooth also. And then you kind of have to pinch the stuff you draw to make it look more like cracks in a rock. And I think the brush was a bit too big. So I'm gonna use the rock texture one just to get a bit of details. Whoa. Don't forget to save. Even if Blender is kind of stable, I kind of get a lot of the times it kind of freezes for a couple of seconds and has to compute stuff. But in general, I'm using the Blender from the official version from Steam. It's really stable actually. You can find some small bugs. I'm not going to focus on the bottom part because this stone is just going to stand up. So I'm going to do a couple of more of these drawn cracks. And then go to the texture baking because I know one guy that wants to see it. The general workflow, how to texture bake. And there is no new Blender 2.8 builds. Otherwise, I would like to bring these models into Blender 2.8 and do the material setup there because I plan on making our roughness, no, a specular and a metallic texture, and I think Blender 2.8 had been great for that because you can see it in the viewport without like the need to offline render it. And all these assets are gonna, the entire scene I'm building, I'm gonna bring into Unreal later. So my target or my scope for this is real time and Unreal. So I would like to try and stay away from offline rendering anything. I would like to see it in real time instead. So I'm gonna add a couple of small, like stony debris. We have 4. You get 4 texture with the asset pack. So you can either do it like that, but you can also hold control to invert the painting or the brush stroke. And since these textures are the same, it can become quite repetitive, so just dot them out. And you can also change the influence. That was pretty nice, noted yesterday, so it looks like this has been more chipped away. And then I'm gonna use the flatten, and you just go over some of them to make it less apparent that it's mainly 2 different brushes I'm using. Also, this flatten kind of removes the rocky texture. Okay, so I basically more or less did this down to show the workflow for a friend, former colleague. So we have the high poly now. I like to just duplicate it. Oh wait, I should apply base. If you've done any like major, if you do anything with the grab brush, that kind of really changes the beige mess, then you can go ahead and apply the base before duplicating it. So now we have a duplicate. I'm gonna call this one low poly, and I'm gonna add a decimator modifier, and I have one kind of macro over there. So in the modifier tab we can see that it's 650,000 faces. So I will do a factor of like 0.0006 and see how many faces I land on. And yeah, now it's probably buffering because it's gonna buffer when I bake and stuff, because my computer kind of freezes. But hopefully the stream health goes back to good afterwards. And we're at 786 faces, which is way too much. I would rather be almost half of it. So I'm gonna decimate a bit more. You're an angel with that webcam. Thank you. The stream is probably not that smooth now. Alright, 392 is kind of okay, because this is this object is supposed to be like in the center of the scene. And if I clear the position, you can see that it has roughly the shape of the high poly, pretty much, more or less. I'm gonna turn off the wires and stuff like that, and just apply all my modifiers so I get a complete low poly version. Meanwhile I do that, I'm gonna check also. Oh crap. No. So it almost crashed, but it made it. But that was probably because I was doing a couple of other stuff. So we're gonna bake the normal first. So you have to have a material, and you also need to unwrap it. So, and for that I don't like to use the matte cap, only for sculpting. So I'm manually gonna unwrap this guy pretty quickly. And hopefully into like 2 pieces. Oh, wait a minute. I'm gonna clear this seam. Another way of unwrapping really quickly and pretty good is using the smart UV project. If you're gonna do game assets, you don't really care about unless it's a character. But since I marked the seams and I kind of wanted it to have been 2 pieces, I did it manually. Oh. Try to avoid scaling any islands by themselves. So this is going to be the normal map, and I think 256 is okay. Or maybe I should go 512. You can always downscale, but you can't upscale. So I'm gonna save this texture. And for baking, you kind of need to have a reference to the data, texture data. So I have a habit of naming all my normals to normals, and you can give it a color of 0.5, 0.5, and 1 on blue. I think that's the base color for a normal map. And yeah, that's it. So these objects, when you're baking from one to another, they need to be in the same place. But if you're good at naming convention, there's no problem. And then low poly. Yeah, Lord Ugbar and Soggy Pain. It starts to buffer when I'm baking because it's maybe I should try and bake with Blender internal instead. I'm using cycles, so I'm guessing it's using my graphic cards. Yeah, I'm on GPU compute. So I could try and stop and restart the stream after I bake, but I'm gonna bake a lot actually. Anyway, select the high poly, the low poly. Go to bake, select normal, and click selected to active. And then make sure you have the data node selected. And just hit bake. Right. High poly and then low poly. So now it's baking, you can see it up here. And if you get a normal map that looks like this, you have to increase the ray distance. And when you do increase the ray distance, you can see that the results is better. So this is a good normal map, so just save it. Is the stream working again, or should I stop and restart it? Because in the dashboard, the YouTube back. All right. Yeah, you when it starts to buffer, you guys get behind like half a minute or something. So I restarted the stream to get it the health of the stream up and back to like normal. I will try and avoid to normal bake until I get the streaming card. So I think I'm gonna buy one of those Delgato streaming cards, which you can just plug into one of your PCI ports. I was hoping like that my second graphics card could do the encoding, but actually I think baking in Blender with cycles is as effective as offline rendering, so it's using all your system. I could actually try and disable my second graphic card. So I just run on my main graphics card, and the second one is free for encoding, since I'm not gonna do any offline rendering. So I have a couple of stuff left to do in this scene, but I'm gonna avoid normal baking, as I said. So I'm gonna model one of these guys. And I'm doing an instance with Alt-D instead of Shift-D, because then if I do any changes on the mesh, it's being reflected to the other one. So let's move this to my Greeble layer. Oh, I shouldn't have... yeah. You can't apply scale to a multi-user object, but I kind of like this scale, so I'm gonna apply the scale for all of these guys. So Hoyt asks, is it possible to export the whole scene to Unreal without merging objects and with keeping their transforms? It is possible. If you export... I exported this scene by mistake to Unreal. I just wanted one of my stones. But if you export this scene as it is, it's going to take all these objects and export them, but their origin points it's not going to be where it is here. It's going to be at scene 0, 0, 0. So every origin point is over here. So basically you get this scene, but it's kind of a stupid export because all of these guys are instances of each other. Like in Unreal or Unity, you don't want these to be separate objects. You want them to be instances of each other. And that's basically to keep the geometry as low as possible, and also like the materials. If there are instances, it's less draw calls for the render engine. So yesterday I found a really nice plugin for Unity where you can export an entire scene, and it's kind of smart export, so it understands that these are instances. But for Unreal it's not possible at the moment, so that's why I have this assets layer. So I will just export 2 of these trees, yeah, these guys also, but I haven't sculpted them yet. Or I have sculpted them, but I haven't made a low poly version. So I will export like these trees and these 3 rocks and these 3 rocks. And then in Unreal you have to kind of rebuild the scene, unless there's a smarter way. But I haven't found that way with FBX export yet. I have some kind of faith that in the future we're gonna have GLTF, and that that exchange format's gonna be a bit smarter. But basically how I'm gonna approach this is I'm just gonna export all my assets and then rebuild the scene in Unreal, pretty much as I've done here in Blender. So all the trees will be placed with a particle system or a landscape brush, and I guess I have to place all this stuff by hand. So for anyone who's listening, and the guys, Como Lego, I think their name, it's a Brazilian studio, the guys who made the Unity add-on, they were like, they might do a Unreal in the future, Unreal add-on. So that would be super helpful. Okay, so I'm just gonna model this guy. I might go into Sculpt, but I'm not gonna go into texture baking, because if I texture bake, the stream is gonna die until I can get that streamer card. But I have done some freelance work, so I have an invoice I'm gonna send, and for that money I might buy that streamer card. And when I did the base model for these guys, I didn't really have anything in mind. Otherwise, then there's gonna be 4 of them standing there, and I'm gonna sculpt a bit on them. But they kinda need to look apart. I'm gonna hide this guy so we can see it. And someone asked yesterday when I streamed, I did a test stream, if I use any reference, and I really don't use reference when you do something this low poly and stylized. You can just go from your, like, whatever you have in mind. But you can also check up stuff on Sketchfab, that's pretty good, to see how other people, what they are doing. So, but one idea I have is I'm gonna do like one of these guys for these, I think. So basically something like this, it's gonna stand on top of it and have a bit of stones. And these are also like very low poly. It's just the normal map that makes it looks like there's rock on it. Oops. So I'm gonna, yeah, I've deleted that face. I'm gonna make the base for that sculpting part, which I was talking about, having some kind of rocks and stuff next to it. And I think that's enough. One problem which I see here in my blocking scene is that they're gonna intersect with each other's, but that actually might be a good thing and not a bad thing. So I'm placing stuff in the scene pretty much based on this. The first thing I did is like ground plane. So this ground plane I have to get into Unreal later, and then I could do some use the tools in Unreal to change the landscape, but I kind of need this base into Unreal. And I'm not gonna do any characters for this stream at all. I'm just gonna do this scene. I'm gonna use the Unreal robot guy you get when you start a new project. And it's gonna be third person. So yeah, I think I'm pretty much done with this. I'm gonna take it to sculpting and start sculpting it. So I'm just gonna check its name. So it's Obelix 1. And as usually, I make a new file. I just delete this one. I append it in from my blocking scene. Obelix 1. And I save this in my assets folder. And I have to add a lot of geometry to this guy. I could actually oh, maybe no. I kind of want this edge loop going in the middle, so I reverse that. And once you start adding all this like extra geometry, then it's too late to change the base mesh. Then you have to go back to the original one, which I kind of destroyed when I did it like this, but anyways. Shading, matte cap, and hopefully we're gonna get to the stage where we can start adding our own matte caps, just like brushes, because these are very limited. There's not that many I actually use or like. It's like this one from ZBrush and that one. And also one thing, before you add the multi-res, you can actually mark all the edges. Why didn't it? I'm gonna turn off matte cap for a while. Like, mark all the edges you know gonna be troublesome, because I still want it to have this low poly look. So I can add the multi-res, but I'm gonna see where there's a problem. Also, I have a mechanical keyboard, which you kinda probably can hear. So it doesn't really matter how the edges looks like. Okay, that might be a problem. But you can always fix it when you go into the high poly skull. And like this this base mesh is gonna get so wrecked anyway, and it doesn't matter, because later when you use the decimate modifier, it fixes itself. You're like recreating geometry anyway. So I think one step more is needed. So I'm gonna use this menu because my own menus are lagging. So from now on it's gonna be just a lot of sculpting. But if any one of you ever find a add-on for Blender to export an entire scene to Unreal, which has kind of like smart, or at least that it knows that instances shouldn't be exported as separate objects. So if you have a scene made up out of like 39 models, but you use a lot of instances, it still only export those 39 models. And also material, because material takes up a long time. When you're exporting a couple of objects, for each one you have to like recreate the material in Unreal. And it's probably not that big of a deal in this scene, since I don't have that many assets, but if you're up to like 30, 40 assets, then you're gonna spend a lot of time just recreating materials, which would be great if it could do by default. So I'm gonna start adding the stones here at the foundation, the base of it. And I think it's area plane. Maybe if I take view plane, I can get them to go upwards more than like the normals, but I don't think it's possible. It's always going to use the normals, yeah. So, oh sorry, I was still on area. Ah yeah, it was another texture. I'm gonna go back to area plane, because then I can place from like low angles like that. And I have to reset this one, yeah. Okay, that one didn't go. So maybe this, yeah, now it's kind of too late, but maybe I should have smoothened these guys out a bit more. Okay, I kind of want some close to it. I can later go and smooth the ones that interfere with the model itself a bit more. And I was thinking for the future streams, I would like to reserve Fridays for Blender 2.8 and Eevee, but the buildbot hasn't really done any new builds for a while for Windows, so it's not gonna happen this Friday, but maybe the next one. We could, I could sit and work like this and bring these models into 2.8, and we could check new features and like possible ways of already used 2.8. I would actually like to use it for setting up the materials. So I'm gonna use the flatten brush again. Just go over these guys a little bit. Oh, not that. And if you're in Stockholm on the 2nd of November, there's gonna be a Blender user group meeting, the very first one, at least in a long while. So the 2nd of November in Gamla Stan. You can check it up on meetup.com. Search for Blender 3D, I think, and you're gonna see a group with like 40 users or something like that. So I'm gonna be there. There's gonna be a couple of other guys. I think Daniel, who made a splash screen for 2.8 so far, he's gonna be there. So there's gonna be a bit talk about 2.8 hopefully. So you're more than welcome to sign up and appear. It's gonna be food and drinks and a lot of Blender. So yeah. The stream health seems pretty good now, or why is it down in my backend? Ah, now it's back up for me. So I'm probably gonna stream more on YouTube than Twitch, because YouTube seems like I have a better connection to the server, at least a tiny bit. But the issue is whenever I do something GPU intensive in Blender, you guys gonna get the buffering. And I think the only way to solve that is either get like a small secondary computer that only handle the stream, or I get one of those streaming cards. And hopefully that will do all the encoding, and my graphics card can just do the work on Blender. So yeah, I kinda have to finish up this model a little bit more. And these streams are not gonna be like tutorial based-ish. It's gonna be just me working, and yeah, I can try and explain stuff as I go if you see something that you don't know. Like on the Twitch stream, there were a guy that didn't know about the cast to sphere in edit mode, so I can quickly show it here if it's somebody else that doesn't know about it, because it's one of my favorite modeling feature. So when you have an object and you want it to be more spherical, you can just go Alt-Shift-S and cast it to a sphere. you don't have to go and add a modifier. You can do it like this, but it's more destructive, but it's still pretty nice. So he said he will save a lot of time. Another feature I like is the extrude and rotate. So it's not that, and that's Alt R, and it's gonna rotate around the 3D cursor. So that's not really good on these organical shapes, but it's kind of good if you're doing something more mechanical. So you can always get those extruded curves. But let's get back to the sculpting. And the grab brush is one of my favorites also. I kind of don't want it to have this super rigid shape. So I'm just gonna grab it and twist this part a little bit. And another brush that's really nice is Inflate. So especially if you're gonna go for this stylized look, you can just add like, whoa, that was a bit much. Like random thickness. We actually got the issue over there. And you can pinch with this brush by holding Control, but I rather use the other pinch brush. All right. And like these artifacts in the high poly, you don't really need to fix them. Later when you cast to when you're making your low poly version with the decimate modifier, it's gonna solve itself. And I'm gonna do a tiny Easter egg, which I've done on most of my assets. So I'm gonna use I think this brush. So I like to do a, whoa, that was kind of low poly. I think you should try and keep rectangular phaser, otherwise you're gonna get those stretch. Okay, this place is good. I'm gonna do a tiny Blender logo. So it's only gonna appear in the normal map anyway. Oh. I'm just gonna check my base mesh. So this might be an issue. So this is the mask brush. If you haven't used it yet, it's quite handy. It's exactly like in ZBrush. And you can subtract with control. And I'm gonna invert the selection. And then I'm gonna use the hammered copper one, but holding control to make it inverted, the mask. So yeah, this brush is also nice. But I can actually see that I should have gone with I'm gonna regret this and apply another layer of subdivision. Because the details on those strokes were kind of too low resolution. So we have this stony brush where you can just paint in these cracks and around them a bit, and then use the pinch. First I'm just gonna smooth out where it ends, and then you can increase the pinch strength and just pinch these parts together. And I'm gonna add a bit more strokes here. I mean, there's kinda a lot of things to sculpt on this. And I'm not really happy with this either. I have... See, does it go upwards or inwards? I think inwards. Yeah. And probably the pinch one is gonna be good here. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to sculpt. But if you sculpt too much, it's also gonna start to look like clay instead of stone. It kinda already does it. But yeah. Oh. Oh, damn it, it seems like the stream start to buffer again because maybe this sculpting is too GPU intensive also. Hello, Ghost Edit. Isn't the chat is supposed to appear in stream? I don't know if it's doing it or not. It did it before. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more of these like notches and cracks. I can actually start adding this like rocky surface details a tiny bit. I'm not gonna use that much on this this part as on the ground, but a little bit. So I think I'm gonna save this one as like version 1, and then I'm gonna finish it up later, but like continue on sculpting on it. But I kind of want it, I kind of want a low poly version and see how it looks in the scene. So I'm gonna duplicate it. Call it low poly. And this is the part where the stream is also probably gonna start lagging. Because I'm not really sure if it's gonna work in the scene, so in the blocking scene, so I'm gonna make a low poly version and bring it in and check how it looks. I'm not gonna bake the normal map, because then for sure the stream is gonna die. I'm gonna try and lower the bitrate a bit and see if that helps the stream. 589 polygons. Should try to be around maybe 400 or something. I'm gonna try and enable music. Maybe that's a bad idea if it's buffering a lot. Alright, now it seems like I had to restart OBS, but god damn it, it's still buffering a lot. Ooh. Alright, since I can't really work on this scene because I can't do the normal bakings, and when I streamed on Twitch it was the same issue, and I couldn't even texture paint also because it's gonna buffer and lag too much. So I was thinking maybe do something in Blender 2.8. I downloaded the latest build and it's from Monday, so it's not going to be anything really new, I don't think. I have used that version. So I'm gonna close Blender 2.79 and this scene I'm working on. I'm gonna have to work on it off stream and look into one of those cards, streaming cards. But you guys who are watching, you 10 people, we're gonna jump into Blender 2.8 for a while. So I'm saving this one, quitting Blender, starting Blender 2.8. So I'm gonna check out the principal shader. It's probably pretty similar to the one in 2.79. But still I want to... Okay, it's the default shader, yeah. So wait a minute, maybe instead of making something new, I'm just gonna take a look amongst my my older files. Okay. Seems like it didn't really like... Oh no, it's loaded. So I guess all these materials are... they are probably... Or did they get converted to principals? Yeah. So this is going to be really good for making game assets, because you can check the normal maps is pretty good in 2.79, but all this like specular and roughness and the metallics, you don't really have any maps for that unless you make your own material, your own PBR, which I have done, but still it doesn't look anywhere near this in the viewport. Especially the metallics just look dark in the current viewport. They don't look like metals like this one. So this was a nice feature that, because I'm pretty sure these materials were done a long time ago, and we're using the metallic shader. I'm just gonna try out the volumetric. volume absorption. How weird. Contact shadow. But what is the difference between a shadow and a contact shadow? Oh, it looks amazing. But I don't think there's really any new big feature in Eevee. I should try and make a new Eevee-sode, but probably email Clement before and see if there's anything new to talk about. And also I migrated my settings from 2.79 to 2.8, and that seems to have messed up some stuff. Alright, stream health seems to be back on track. But I kind of want to work on my scene, which I've started, but I know it will lag. It depends. What do you guys want to look at? Should we continue with 2.8, or should I work on my forest scene and try to avoid normal baking and do all the other stuff like modeling? The chat is dead now. Maybe it's a delay also. What I could do in 2.8 is actually bring in one of my assets and do some specular map painting probably, but I'm not really done with the base texturing, so okay, you guys are all quiet. I'm gonna close 2.8 and go back to 2.79 and work on my scene, but I'm basically just gonna do the base modeling and maybe UV unwrap, but no texture baking and no texture painting. So I'm gonna go for the sword. And the same as usually, I'm gonna start a new file, append in the sword itself, object, sword, so I'm gonna take a brief. Lord Fram is asking, is there any difference between the two versions? Yeah, 2.8 is still under development. It's like pre-alpha stage, so it's just nightly builds. But the main difference is the viewport. The viewport code is totally worked over. So you have support for PBR materials, which means you can get like physically based rendered materials. And some way further down this stream, I'm probably gonna start bringing in my assets. Yeah, regarding my scene project, yeah, I'm gonna bring in all the assets because I only have like normal maps and the like albedo or diffuse map. So I'm gonna bring in my assets to paint all the specular and roughness in 2.8 because that's the only way to actually see metallic and roughness in the viewport. You can't see it in 2.79. And in 2.8 it's really close to Unreal. So what you see in 2.8 is pretty much the stuff you're gonna end up in Unreal. So anyways, I'm gonna take a short break and look at some reference for the sword and try to find something that's more appealing than the sword I have now. I'm not really sure if it's going to influence the number of draw calls. I think the draw calls are directly correlated to the materials in itself. So I don't think like adding a texture channel like roughness or metallic, that doesn't increase the draw call. The draw call in itself is for the entire materials. And I think I'm not sure, but I think there's a smart way of setting up materials. So you have a bunch of materials that are based on the same, like, what's called, like when you're coding, it's like superclass. So the like adding a lot of PBR materials is not gonna add that many draw calls, but if you start to add stuff that's gonna be transparent and stuff like that, I think that's a totally different shader base. So our contact shadow already in 2.8, the setting was there, but I didn't see any real difference from enabling it or not. But regarding 2.8, I have all my like episodes, so I might contact Clement again and try to make a new episode to check what's new, like contact shadows and what's happening with like subsurface scattering, if it's gonna be implemented or not, or like soon, or if it's gonna be postponed. But I think I'm gonna stick to 2.79 for this stream, and then work on 2.8. I'm gonna do those like pre-recorded. Yeah, Nezumi, I pretty much related on your videos when it comes to EV. To be fair, I've been kinda slacking making EV videos, but I'm gonna go back to making one of those pretty soon. Especially before our Blender user meetup. Because there was another Blender user there, like Yigemoon. He's living in Stockholm, and he mentioned the EV videos. That he also likes to watch them, and I should do pretty much try to make one at least every second week, because in the beginning there was a lot of new features added, so I could do them really quickly, but now I think the feature has kind of stagnated, and I think they're like going over the code and optimizing and adding more stuff to the engine called Workbench, which is pretty much the one you see when you go into edit mode. So that's at least the impression I've got so far, that like EV is a bit on the back burner, and they're working on all the other engines, especially the Workbench engine. So, if you guys look at that Sketchfab link I sent you, I kind of like the handle with the leathery part, and that seems to be just painted on this model. So I'm gonna sculpt it, so we get a little bit more details, like geometry details. But otherwise, it looks kind of cool. Kind of basic sword. I was looking for... I wanted to do some kind of weird sword. Oh, that one looked really cool. I'm gonna link it also. And yeah, this is the one from Link's sword in Zelda. And this guy I've seen on Blender Nation before. Lord Fram, thanks for answering. The chat is quite slow. Yeah, it doesn't... I think there's a kind of delay before you guys... I mean, the chat is instant, but the stream has a delay. I would love to see the Workbench with some more nice floor reflection. Yeah, I also would like to see Workbench where you can work like in this texture mode, or this model is kind of bad example. I'm gonna open up another asset quickly. like my oak tree. I think that's the... no. Probably this is the latest version. So one thing in the workbench is that you have this Fresnel look on the vertices, but I noticed like in face mode you didn't have the Fresnel look. But I think one important aspect of the workbench should be like working in textured mode. So if I go into texture paint, oh yeah, should I think this mode is quite important also, where you have like an unlit scene, so you have no shadows, nothing. You only see like the texture influence. So that's pretty important to check like normal maps. I don't have an ambient occlusion baked yet, but I'm gonna do one later. And stuff like this is really hard to... you can hardly see it in like material mode. But this theme, if I go to texture mode, is super obvious. So stuff like this in the workbench should be really, at least for me, it should be really important. So I could actually try and fix this really quickly by probably use the smudge brush or the blur. Oh, wait. Alright, that didn't really work. I'm gonna use one of the basic brushes we have, like soft. But stuff like this is, as I said, when you have a lot of viewport shading, it's kind of hard to realize. Okay, I'm gonna have to touch this up later. But like in a shaded mode, it's hard to see. But in a unlit mode, it's like really easy to see. So that's my hopes for the workbench engine, that we get some focus on texturing. So I'm looking at some reference right now. And oh, this one was nice. I think this one is made by a Blender artist, Matheus Pedroso. I'm gonna follow him. So I think this sword is... I'm posting it now in chat, so it's probably gonna appear before I speak about it. But this is the sword style I want to go from, with this like broad base, broad sword, and then a sculpted handle, and the thing at the end, I forget what it's called. But I won't do the like skull face thingy, but a broadsword with some kind of runic inscription, because that would be really cool to have emission shader, so they're kind of glowing later when I texture. So I'm gonna start with the base sculpt and then the modeling. So this one can actually, I can delete. I think I'm gonna start with the circle instead, and lower the vertex count to 6, because then I get these two edges to extrude the thing that's blocking you from getting your hand cut off when you're fighting with the sword. So this is not gonna be the correct scale. I'm gonna scale it later, but I'm gonna try and get basic shape. I'm just gonna add another loop cut there, so I can extrude this up a bit. And these two faces are the ones I want to make the guard. Maybe it's called guard. And instead of just extruding, because then it becomes really weird, I'm gonna use Alt-E and individual faces, extrude individual faces. Whoa. I don't want to extrude scale on the medium point. I want to extrude their individual. But now I might want to extrude or scale a medium point. Maybe I should be using a mirror modifier. So it becomes a little bit easier to add shapes. Oh yeah. So it's not, I'm not doing it perfect symmetrical, but for me that's not an issue. It's almost a feature if you're gonna do low poly stuff. It depends on the style. If you're doing like totally symmetrical stuff, then yeah, you should probably be more careful or aware. But I'm not doing that. Well, maybe that was too big. Yeah. So I'm actually thinking of making the blade a separate object, and then I can join them later, because I'm thinking that it's going to be easier to work on it that way. So I will add a plane. I will do the same thing. Add a mirror modifier. And I kind of like that they have the same origin point. Ooh, that kind of looked interesting. I'm quickly gonna look at reference again. So yeah, it's gonna go wide quickly and then narrow in and then wide again, but I don't think I'm gonna do that wide again. So I'm just gonna make it wide at the base, and then it's gonna go thin to like a normal, not normal, but more realistic sword. Gonna see if I find any more references. Only 8 results on Sketchfab. That's... Wait a minute. There's a collection with more. Okay. Yeah. Oh. This part is not going to be visible anyway, it's going to be in the stone. So I can also mirror the y-axis. So I get the thickness. And now I want to make that the thing in the middle. I could just add a edge loop, snap to vertices and make sure that they merge, and merge some of these, and yeah, merge that one. So this is just the base shape. I'm gonna sculpt most of the features, but I still think it's nice to get some of that stuff for free with the base mesh. Wait a minute, wait. So this was kind of too extreme, I think. I'm gonna try and merge these two guys also. So yeah, I think this is the... What? Wait, what happened? It might just be a shading. Yeah, it was just a shading glitch. Or so I think I'm happy with the base shape. I think all the other stuff I can add later in the sculpt. So I'm just gonna make it a bit taller. So yeah, let's make probably join them up. Or I'm gonna save this as a base if I ever want to revisit it. So I'm just gonna make a new version, apply the modifiers and join the meshes. Call it high poly, and I probably need to mark some edges for the multi-res modifier. So some of these edges. Oh crap! I forgot. I should probably have done this before I apply the modifier, so I don't have to do it on several phases. But you see, it loses its shape because of the multi-res. Yeah, that I should. Whoa. No, that doesn't even work. I think I have to put a bevel crease of 1. I could actually add more geometry. I'm gonna try and do that by just beveling the edges a tiny bit. Ah, crap. I'm just destroying it. I should... well, I'm gonna open the the base mesh instead, so then I don't have to add that much geometry. Since it's on mirror, I can just add subdivision surface instead, because it basically does what the multi-res do, but you can see it in edit mode. I want it. So I'm doing the edge creases in with a subdivision surface instead of the multi-res, because that's also one thing you can't see in the multi-res. You can only see it in object mode, so instead of like jumping out to object mode all the time, I'm gonna use subdivision surface, and then I'm removing it and just adding multi-res. So this part can be, this should be sharp. Maybe that one was unnecessary. So the thing in the middle didn't look that good, but I think I'm gonna have to sculpt it anyway. So which file am I in? Yeah. I can actually try and keep them in two separate objects and join them when I'm done. So I'm gonna start with this guy, the handle. I'm gonna make everything shaded smooth. Oh, turn on the screencast keys. Wait a minute, I could make another version if I want to go back. I think I'm going to do it. Right. Let's just fix this. In Sculpt, maybe the base mesh was a bit problematic. Oh, I shouldn't use this menu because it's lagging. I'm gonna use this one instead. So we're gonna lay those the bandits, the leather part. I don't think you really need to do it like super correctly. Just make sure you get some of the like going in different directions, and maybe one here. So I need to smooth out some of the artifacts from this brush alpha. it's not. It has a like a faded edge. Well, and this stroke was kind of too small, I think. You can see all this banding from the strokes. You can just smooth it out. And I'm gonna use pinch to make the gap between them a bit tighter. So get the pinch brush over there. Probably increase the influence. And I'm gonna go to matte cap shading. Was it better without? No. So I'm just gonna pinch them a bit. A bit more influence actually. So I don't have to do a ton of brush strokes. And this guy is gonna probably be some kind of brass or metal, not. So I'm gonna do a couple of this, like it looks like it's been hammered or something. There is a special brush for that also, but I'm doing it by hand. I can try and use this one if we mask it out. So I need to mask out this part. And probably gonna inflate it a bit before, because it didn't really have the shape I wanted. So oh crap, I forgot to invert the mask. No. Okay. And let's use the orb hammered metal. So we can just anchor this on top of this one. And then I think I'm actually gonna finish it off with the flatten edge. Just a bit on some spaces. Oh, it's a bit asymmetrical. Right. I want to do something here on the both sides, but I don't know what yet. So I'm gonna keep that space clean for later adding some kind of insignia or something, some kind of detail. So I'm just gonna brush sculpt the guard itself. And I don't know what to do here either. I have to think out something. But for now it's just gonna be these like metal blobs. But later I would like to do something And I could probably, I have this base mesh seems pretty good, so I could just sculpt whatever I want to do there. I don't have to base model anything. So let's add one. Oh crap. Seems like Blender is lagging for me now. Hopefully no buffer for you guys, but most likely. Notch. Crap, when did I save? Save. So this is a bit problematic. No? Yeah, it's punching through to the other side, this stroke. But I have to live with it, I think. I have to sculpt it away. Alright, so I think I need more ideas for this one. Especially that and those handlebars, and let's use the inflate brush and just make these leathery parts a bit more bulby maybe is the word I'm looking for, but mainly so it's too much influence. Can I deflate it with control? I think so. But mainly so it's for the normal map also, so it looks more interesting and not so flat, the handles. I can always go over them again with one of my favorites, the flat end. But for sure this is gonna look more interesting when you bake the normals, because and when you painted it, instead of just having these leather straps painted. So we're gonna have a bit of a structure to them also. All right. This guy probably has way too little geometry, so I'm gonna add a couple of extra loops. Alright. I kinda know when Blender starts to lag, you guys get streaming buffering. Yeah. So this part is gonna be in the stone, so I don't really need to sculpt that part. I'm gonna focus on the base of the blade and all over here, I think. But I need more subdivisions. I don't like that one. Okay, this base mesh was kind of messed up, I think. Actually, maybe I should take the time to do a better base mesh that can be used to make the entire sword, and if I ever want to have the entire sword. That's pretty smart, I think. Okay, it's still on video. YouTube says that the stream is has a bad output stream. Whoa. Yeah, what can I add to it? Come on. Blender has frozen. So. Please don't die. Blender. Yes. I have to figure out why it sometimes punches holes. I think it's the wait, I'm in the wrong brush anyway. There is some sample bias. No, that's how it sampled the texture. Still punching a bit of a I could probably I think you can mask it out. So now it's at least not punching completely through, but you still have some stuff to sculpt away. But I'm not really sure I like this sword so much than this part. I think I have to like think about it and come up with something better. I'm gonna jump into my the blocking scene and see if there's something else I can work on. I have all these guys to make, but that's gonna be super boring. I've done one, and all the other is basically the same. Is there something else I can add? I'm gonna have some kind of like really low poly grass particles, but I'm thinking of doing them in Unreal. I have all these guys to texture paint, but that's gonna make the buffer stream for sure, because it's so GPU intensive. So it killed my when I was streaming on Twitch, and it's gonna kill this one also until I get that streaming card. Then probably like all the stuff that's GPU intensive and CPU intensive is gonna go away, because that's basically what's killing the stream, I think. When Blender starts to buffer, lag or calculate, then it has no power to encode the stream, and those streaming cards just I think you would connect your graphic card to them input, and then the output from them into the monitor, so it just encodes the signal. Maybe I could add another type of tree. So I have this birch and fir and one oak. Maybe I could add another type of tree, because the stones I have pretty much all the ones I need. I was thinking of having some kind of archway or something. Yeah. Oh, I see the quality on the stream on my side looks really low. 720. Yeah, I'm gonna end the stream today. I need to figure out how to stream without the buffering and the lagging. So yeah, anyways, thank you for tuning in. I'm gonna look into streaming card or maybe a second PC or some other solution, because it's kind of hard to work on the computer and stream on the same machine. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'll be back probably on Monday. I'm gonna take the weekend off and probably look up stuff. So happy blending, and take care, guys.